Learn English through story. Whispers of the Hidden Heart. In the ancient city of Celoria, where towering spires of stone brushed the sky and the cobblestone streets echoed with the footsteps of generations, there was a place where secrets lived. The old corner of the city, often overlooked by the wealthy and the hurried, held within its labyrinth of narrow alleys a shop so small and discreet that most never noticed it. This was the bookstore of Marcel Dubois, a quiet man of 50, whose eyes bore the weight of many stories, though his own was carefully concealed. Marcel was an enigma. He had arrived in Celoria decades ago, opening his small, unassuming bookstore on the corner of Rue des Ombres, a street that seemed as forgotten as he wanted to be. His shop, filled with rare and antique books, was a haven for the few who still sought solace in words. It was dimly lit, with shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with stories of lost loves, forgotten kingdoms, and dreams long since past. But among the old tomes and faded pages, Marcel kept one story hidden from every any of his own. He had loved once, deeply, but that love had been buried beneath years of solitude, swallowed by the life he had chosen for himself. In the prime of his youth, Marcel had fallen for a woman named Isabelle, a brilliant and fiery painter who had captured the heart of the entire city with her vivid landscapes and tender portraits. Marcel had admired her from afar, as so many did, but unlike the others, his admiration was not simply for her art. It was for the woman herself, and the way she laughed, the way she moved, the way her presence seemed to fill a room with light. He had never told her how he felt, fearing that someone as extraordinary as Isabelle would never notice someone as ordinary as him. Instead, Marcel had watched her fall in love with another Mona Jules, a fellow artist whose charm and boldness had swept her off her feet. Marcel had convinced himself that he was content to watch from the shadows, never daring to hope for more. When Isabelle and Jules married, Marcel attended the wedding as a distant guest, watching with a heavy heart as the woman he loved danced in the arms of another. Years passed. Isabelle and Jules had moved away to pursue their careers, leaving Celoria behind. And Marcel, in his grief, had opened his bookstore, retreating into the safety of his books, where emotions were confined to the pages, where passion and heartache were someone else's story. But life, as Marcel would soon learn, has a way of unearthing what we bury. It was a chilly autumn afternoon when she walked into the store. Marcel was behind the counter, reading an old manuscript, when the door's bell jingled softly, announcing the presence of a new customer. He looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. It was Isabelle. She was older now, of course. Her hair, once the deep color of chestnuts, was streaked with silver, and faint lines traced the corners of her eyes. But she was still Isabelle, still radiant, still carrying that quiet grace that had first drawn Marcel to her so many years ago. "Marcel," she said softly, as if testing the sound of his name on her lips. "It's been a long time." He nodded, unable to find his voice at first. "Isabelle," he finally managed, the word feeling strange in his mouth after so many years. "Yeah, broken bar, I didn't know you were back in Celoria." She smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "I only returned a few days ago. I wasn't sure if you were still here, but when I saw the signet broken bar," she gestured to the shop, her hand lingering in the air as if she were trying to grasp something intangible. "I thought I'd stop by." Marcel stood, his mind racing. He had imagined this moment countless times over the years, though in his fantasies, he had always been prepared a charming, confident, unaffected by the passage of time. But now, standing before her, all of his old emotions came rushing back, and he felt like the young man he had once been, full of unspoken desire and hidden longing. "How a broken bar, how have you been?" he asked, knowing the question was inadequate but unable to think of anything else. Isabel's smile faltered. "I've been a broken bar, well, I suppose I've been living. Jules passed away last year." Her voice was steady, but Marcel could hear the weight of grief beneath it. "I'm so sorry," Marcel said quietly. He hadn't known, he hadn't heard anything about her or Jules in years, and the news hit him with a strange mixture of sadness and confusion. Isabel nodded, her gaze drifting around the shop. "It's strange, being back here. So much has changed. But this place is a broken bar." She looked at him. "This place is exactly as I remember it." Marcel shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond. Isabel was a widow now. He could see the grief in her eyes, but there was something else there too, something unspoken. For the next hour, they talked, falling into a rhythm that surprised Marcel with its ease. They spoke of the past, of the years that had slipped away from them, of the lives they had lived in the meantime. But there were things neither of them said. Marcel didn't ask her why she had come to his shop specifically, and Isabel didn't mention Jules again. Instead, they skirted around the edges of deeper truths, both of them aware of the whispers of something hidden beneath the surface. As the days turned into weeks, Isabel began visiting the shop regularly. Sometimes she came just to browse, other times to sit and talk with Marcel over tea. The unspoken connection between them grew stronger with each visit, but neither of them dared to address it. Marcel found himself once again caught in the web of his old feelings, feelings he had long ago buried, but which had now resurfaced with a force he hadn't expected. One evening, after closing the shop, they sat together in the back room, surrounded by the scent of old books and the flickering glow of candlelight. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, and Marcel felt his heart pounding in his chest as Isabel looked at him, her eyes soft but intense. "Marcel," she said quietly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about the past, about the choices I made." He swallowed hard, sensing where this was going but not trusting himself to speak. "I've been asking myself," she continued, "what would have happened if things had been different, if I had made different choices." He looked at her, his heart aching with the weight of all the years between them. "You mean a broken bar with Jules?" She shook her head. I mean with you." The words hung in the air, heavy and full of meaning. Marcel felt a rush of emotion, a hope, fear, longing, all crashing into him at once. He had waited so long for this moment, but now that it was here, he didn't know what to do. "I always knew you cared for me, Marcel," Isabel said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even back then. But I was young, and I didn't know how to handle it. I was swept up in everything with Jules, and a broken bar. I didn't see what was right in front of me." Marcel's throat tightened. "Isabel." "Yeah." She held up a hand, stopping him. "I'm not asking you for anything. I don't expect a broken bar. I just needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I regret not seeing you for who you were, for what you felt." Marcel was silent, his mind racing. He had spent so many years hiding his feelings, convincing himself that they didn't matter, that they were in the past. But now, hearing her say these things, he felt the old wounds open up again, raw and painful. "I'm sorry," Isabel whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." Marcel reached out, taking her hand in his. The touch was gentle, but it held all the emotion he couldn't put into words. "You didn't hurt me, Isabelle," he said softly. "I hurt myself by never telling you how I felt. I kept it inside because I was afraid of losing you, of losing what little I had with you, even if it was just friendship." She looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness. "And now?" Marcel hesitated. He didn't know what to say. So much had changed, and yet, in this moment, it felt like nothing had. The feelings were still there, still strong, but they were different now, colored by years of silence and regret. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I don't know what happens now." For a long time, they sat in silence, holding hands, both of them lost in the weight of their shared past and the uncertainty of their future. Finally, Isabelle spoke. "I think I think it's never too late, Marcel, to say what we need to say, to be who we were meant to be." Her words were like a key, unlocking something deep within him. Marcel had spent so many years hiding, not just from Isabelle, but from himself. He had buried his feelings, his desires, his dreams, thinking that it was too late, that he had missed his chance. But maybe Isabelle was right. Maybe it wasn't too late. "I still care about you," Marcel said, his voice steady now. "I always have. I just didn't know if you were broken or if you felt the same." Isabelle smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "I do, Marcel. I always did. I just didn't realize it until it was too late." Marcel's heart swelled with a mixture of joy and sorrow. There were no guarantees, no promises of a future together, but for the first time in years, he felt the weight of his hidden heart lift, and the whispers of what might have been gave way to the possibility of what could still be. It's never too late to face the truths we've hidden in our hearts. Love and regret often walk hand in hand, but courage lies in embracing the emotions we've buried, even when it's difficult. True fulfillment comes from living authentically, and from allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with those who matter most. The heart may whisper its secrets, but it's up to us to listen and act before time slips away. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed, then please like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.